Hello, everyone, and welcome in to Inquire Live at Gameday Central. Today, we are coming to you live from the press box here at M&T Bank Stadium, where in a little bit, the Philadelphia Eagles will kick off the preseason against the Baltimore Ravens. I'm Eagles beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Josh Tolentino, and I am so happy to be joined by my fellow beat reporter, Olivia Reiner. Olivia, welcome to the beat. Welcome to the show. Awesome to have you here on Gameday Central. How are you doing?
Thanks, Josh. I'm doing really well. I am so happy to be here chatting with all of you Eagles fans for Gameday Central. We have a lot to chat about.
Olivia, as you said, we've got a lot to chat about throughout the season. We'll be coming to you live before every single Eagles game to tell you what you need to know about this team. Olivia, where is the best place that our readers, our fans, the subscribers, where they can find us?
Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day is where we would love to hear from you. We will talk about some of your comments, your thoughts, whatever is going on in your mind regarding the Eagles every week later on in our show, the What You Said segment. And so we would love to hear from you.
Like what you mentioned, Olivia, that section called What You Said, that's where you can submit your comments and questions to be read later in the show. Inquire.com/Eagles Game Day is the place to submit. Olivia, it has been a jam-packed few weeks back in Philadelphia. Again, we're here in Baltimore for the preseason opener against the Eagles and Ravens. But what is the latest with this team? I think we've got to start. Olivia, Eagles coming off that Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. They're looking to have, overcome this what's called a term in the NFL, a Super Bowl hangover, as many put it, as this team. And, we'll dissect the roster here in a little bit. But the Eagles, favorites to repeat as NFC championships heading into this season. What have your early observations been on this team so far as they attempt to tackle these heightened expectations?
Right now, the Eagles are not too focused on what happened last year, especially at the end of the season, a disappointing for the team Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. They're looking ahead. This is a new season, a new team, looking to forge a new identity, something that quarterback Jalen Hurts spoke about very extensively the very first time we heard from him as training camp opened, was that the team is currently in that process of figuring out what their identity is. It's going to be different from what it was last year, just because that there is some continuity between the two rosters, especially on offense, doesn't mean that they're going to have the same identity this year. As training camp comes along here, as we get through the preseason, we'll start to get a better understanding of what that identity is going to be. However, we're not going to get the full sense of it until we start seeing some of these regular season games.
Olivia, one of the biggest storylines in the offseason, Jalen Hurts signing a massive five-year contract extension worth up to, I believe, $255 million. The Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, obviously Nick Sirianni, they have identified him as their franchise quarterback, and now it's about continuing to build around him as they navigate a road, essentially, again, back to the Super Bowl. Like what you mentioned, Jalen is trying to help this team find their identity for this year's Eagles. But it's worth pointing out, Olivia, it does help. They are retaining 9 of 11 offensive starters. Definitely some changes at running back and also at right guard. It appears Cam Jurgens is the lead candidate there to replace Isaac Seumalo at right guard. But they've got everyone back. Obviously the rest of the entire offensive line there with the veterans Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, and obviously the trio of weapons there for Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. What are your early just pickings here as you've seen? It seems like really all throughout camp, Olivia, the offense has had better days than the defense dealing with a lot more change.
Right, of course. And it's easy to expect that the offense will be a little bit more comfortable right now going into this upcoming season, just because of the nature of the continuity. Josh, as you mentioned, 9 returning starters of the 11. So really, they're just kind of continuing to get comfortable. This is Jalen Hurts' 3rd year in the offense as a starter. Of course, there is going to be some new wrinkles here and there. We've got Brian Johnson stepping into an offensive coordinator role. However, there's, again, some continuity with him, too. He's been the quarterback's coach for the last couple of seasons. So preseason is going to be a great place for not just the players, but also the coaching staff getting used to just everything that goes into this, and Johnson getting used to calling the plays from the sideline. So it'll be very interesting to see, especially in this first preseason game here in Baltimore, how those kinks start to work out.
Nick Sirianni, he was a bit coy throughout the week, Olivia, when we were peppering him with questions. Is Jalen Hurts going to play? Not just Jalen, but the rest of the starters. Olivia, you and I were here very, very early, over an hour ago, and we witnessed a lot of the key players, star players. They were participating in a cardio workout that during the regular season is typically reserved for healthy scratches. That's an indication that a majority of the starters will not play. But again, an opportunity for Brian Johnson, the new offensive coordinator, and Sean Desai, the new defensive coordinator, to get into their roles. It's not just today, but even earlier in the week, Nick Sirianni had a simulated game practice at Lincoln Financial Field where we saw both coordinators trying to mix in, their personnel substitutions, obviously calling and relaying plays to the huddle. Even though the personnel is going to be a little bit different today with a lot of reserves as expected, still a big game here, so to say, for Brian Johnson, Sean Desai making their debuts here with the Eagles.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll learn a little bit about them and kind of what their schemes will have to offer. However, we have to keep in mind it's preseason. I don't think Nick Sirianni wants to be giving away every single intricacy and fun, flashy thing that might be happening with the offense, especially going into this upcoming season. So keeping the expectations low, but yes, expect to see a whole bunch of different faces getting different reps and trying to get a better sense of where the competition stands in some of those position groups where there are roles up for grabs.
Certainly one notable change to point out, one rule change from the NFL. In past years, we saw teams, the Eagles, being forced to cut players, a certain amount of players, in small numbers after each preseason game. They'd go from 90 to 85 to 80, as they try to get down to 53 players by the end of the August. This year is the very first year where the Eagles and all the other NFL teams can keep all 90 players throughout the preseason, so that will certainly factor into how personnel is used. One more thing worth remembering, the Eagles do have joint practices coming up with the Cleveland Browns next week, the Indianapolis Colts the week after that. So certainly a lot of run there to be had with Jalen Hurts and the rest of the starters. Olivia, let's transition over to who's hurt and who's healthy. And Olivia, I'll tell you, this team is one of the healthiest teams, not just going into last year, they had all 22 starters play in the Super Bowl. That is not a common occurrence. But even going into the summer, this is Nick Sirianni. He's gone with a plan where it's lighter practices, not just in length, but also with the schedule. Not many back-to-back sessions. And we've seen the benefits here. You've got Brandon Graham going into his late 30s playing. Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, they all provide feedback to Nick Sirianni that they're enjoying this lighter training schedule. And it's hard to argue with the results thus far. Really, the only significant injury of camp, Patrick Johnson, a backup edge rusher, he's dealing with an ankle, and a depth receiver, Deion Kane, also dealing with an ankle. Otherwise, you've got to be pretty happy with how healthy this team has been.
100%. I don't know what they're weaving into the jerseys, lucky, whatever, clovers and whatnot, just trying to keep this team healthy. But you're right. So much of their luck that happened this past season has carried over into the start of training camp. We saw that inside linebacker Nakobe Dean was sidelined briefly with an ankle injury. However, he returned to practice earlier this week. James Bradbury also dealing with a groin injury to start training camp. He's been practicing, but he was limited on Tuesday. So these players have taken some time off, but they're handling their injuries. They're coming back. So the Eagles are very fortunate right now to be in this position where they have this health, and they're going to want to do everything that they can to maintain it as they progress through the preseason and then eventually getting started at week 1.
Yeah, and certainly one factor, and what Nick Sirianni even said in his own words this past week, if we don't see Jalen Hurts, which is seeming like a likelihood as he's worked out here before the game, but if Jalen Hurts does not take the field for the preseason opener, he will certainly be on the field on Monday and Tuesday, again, with the Cleveland Browns coming to town. Again, in Nick Sirianni's words, he says he enjoys that controlled environment there in practice where Jalen and the rest of the offense is still able to get in important work in regards to executing the playbook, getting the play calls from Brian Johnson. He has been on. He's just been on fire. Jalen Hurts with Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, his top two wide receivers. Dallas Goedert had a nice practice the other day, but that time is to be had there in those joint practices in a controlled setting. No one's allowed to necessarily hit the quarterback there. Again, Nick Sirianni looking forward to those joint sessions over the next 2 weeks. Olivia, let's transition over to what you said. A reminder to everyone viewing back home, inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. Please submit your comments and questions there throughout the show, throughout the week, and we will have a chance to read them right here on our favorite segment called What You Said. Olivia, our first one, it's kind of in line with what we were just discussing. It comes from Retired at 58. Congrats, Retired at 58. He or she says, please do not play any of the starters. Definitely no Jalen Hurts. Olivia, I'll transition this into a question, but if Jalen Hurts isn't going to be on the field, who among that quarterback group are you most excited to see? Is it Ian Book in year 2 with the Eagles? Is it Tanner McKee, the very tall rookie out of Stanford? Marcus Mariota, a full circle moment with him joining the Eagles in free agency.
Yeah, Tanner McKee is quite tall. What is he? 6'6", 6'5". I mean, he can peer over that offensive line very well. It's easy to see why the Eagles are so high on him and why they bothered to use a draft pick on him in the first place. But yes, this is it's definitely going to be an interesting. Just interesting to see how the snaps are distributed this preseason. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone. Is that a cop-out? Marcus Mariota, certainly looking forward to seeing him and trying to continue to build on a positive trajectory coming off of the last couple of weeks of training camp. I would say earlier it was a little bit more of a struggle for him. However, I think he's strung together some better practices over the last couple of days. We've also seen him and his ability to run is and use his legs to avoid trouble and to continue to move the ball down the field is quite impressive. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that tonight. And yes, definitely that QB3 role. Who is it going to be? Ian Book, Tanner McKee. I think we'll get a lot more answers as these next 3 games go on.
Certainly worth pointing out that Tanner McKee has handled a majority of those third-team snaps, while Ian Book relegated to that developmental role with the other developmental players in that period at the end of every practice. I'm curious to see Marcus Mariota, like what you pointed out, Olivia, very fast. And Jordan Mailata the other day said, I had no idea he was, this is a PG show, but he was that dang fast. Marcus Mariota has been taking off a lot throughout practices, not necessarily certain what benefit that has for the other players, but it shows Marcus Mariota still has that ability to take off at, as he approaches that age 30 season. Again, a full moment, full circle moment for him and Eagles fans as he makes his Eagles debut today in the preseason opener. Olivia, our next question comes from Tony House. She says, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown appear to be in mid-season form. Sounds wonderful, just wonderful. I mean, if you're an Eagles fan, you've got to be so happy with how not just this duo performed, how this duo is continuing to perform in the training camp sessions, but last year, A.J. Brown broke the franchise receiving record in his first year with the Eagles. Even Nick Sirianni is saying A.J. Brown looks quicker. He looks faster. Just said that a few days ago. Olivia, you've joined the beat now for a few weeks. What are your observations of that connection between Jalen Hurts and their top receiver, A.J. Brown?
Yeah, it just seems automatic, really, like just how the ball always seems to find him. They are always on the same page. And what's really impressive to me is the fact that he has only been working with Jalen Hurts now for 1 season. So what will this upcoming season hold? Can it get even better? Can it be even more improved? I'll also add that it's not just A.J. Brown that looks as good as he does. Devontae Smith also looks great as well. He's had a strong camp so far. This is, these are 2 of the biggest weapons in the Eagles offense. They need to continue to build this chemistry with Hurts. It's a matter of continuing to sustain what they built last season going into the season if the offense wants to begin to replicate that similar success that they saw last season.
Olivia, I'm going to remind our audience of a play at that practice over the link that I referenced earlier. I believe that was Tuesday when Nick Sirianni wanted to simulate a game environment. It was one of the offenses, again, the offenses look so good all throughout these past 2.5, 3 weeks. It was almost a rarity for the ball to, be incomplete to touch the ground. But Tuesday's practice, not necessarily as crisp. There were certainly, a lot of, or a handful rather, of incompletions there from Jalen Hurts. One of their more sloppier practices from an offensive side. But Jalen Hurts, the very last play of practice, just reminds us how this chemistry that he has with A.J. Brown. Keep in mind, it's one of their sloppier practices of the summer, and he just hits A.J. Brown on a streaking route down the left sideline for about a 50-yard completion. The fans that were invited to that practice, they went crazy. That was the last play of practice. Jalen was very satisfied. He grittied off the field. He celebrated with A.J. It's just a quick reminder, again, of that connection, even when the days aren't going so great, that just one flick of the wrist, Jalen Hurts always able to find A.J. Brown no matter where he is on the field. Olivia, our last comment comes from Chris Madison, who says he's referencing E.J. Smith's article on rookie Nolan Smith. You can check that out at Enquirer.com. But Chris says the fact that Nolan Smith and Tyler Steen match up against each other a lot points out the subtle importance of hitting on each draft pick. This commenter brings up a great point, Olivia. Nolan Smith, he's been going up against Tyler Steen, not just Tyler, but he's been going up against Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. Jalen Carter, they're being thrown right into the thick of it. Jalen Carter going up against Jason Kelsey in practice. You really can't ask more. It's a very repetitive phrase, but they like to say iron sharpens iron, and that's the case here with this rookie class. Specifically with those two first-rounders, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith out of Georgia, as they go up against a pretty top offensive line over these past few weeks of practice.
Absolutely. Yes, iron sharpens iron. It's a cliche that is thrown around a lot, but in this case, we're absolutely seeing the benefit of having a great offensive line going up against a great defensive line, and they get to benefit from each other and getting to work against each other, and not just when they're going up in team drills and individual drills or one-on-ones, I should say, but after those reps, getting to have those conversations and picking each other's brains about what they did, what they saw pre-snap, the moves that they used or whatever. So it is quite fun to watch, I guess, from my perspective, just getting to see those interactions after the rep, just to see how they're learning and interacting and growing, because that's how they learn, and that's how they'll continue to get better.
It's been a regular occurrence, as you mentioned, Nolan Smith seeking out advice from Lane Johnson, the franchise right tackle, arguably future Hall of Famer. He is taking up every bit of advice that he can get from those veterans on that offensive line. Olivia, it is almost time for predictions, but let's first go to some thoughts from Enquirer Eagles beat reporter Jeff McLean.
Hi, I'm Jeff McLean of the Philadelphia Enquirer, Eagles beat reporter. Thanks for joining me here on Gameday Central to look at the Eagles preseason opener against the Ravens in Baltimore. Here's what I'm looking for in this game. Number one, I'm not looking for Jalen Hurts. I don't expect the Eagles quarterback to play for a number of reasons. One being that just seems to be what Nick Sirianni and a lot of coaches around the NFL are doing in terms of handling their top players. The Eagles not only didn't kind of practice the starters very hard on Thursday, they did ramp them up a little bit on Wednesday because I expected them to not, because they weren't expected to play on Saturday. But with the Browns coming to town next week for joint practices on Monday and Tuesday, my guess is that Hurts and the first team and even most of the second team will get a lot of their work in those practices, and that'll be kind of a setup to or that will actually save them from having even playing the second preseason game. So let's not think about Hurts. Marcus Mariota will probably get the start under center or quarterback. I don't think we'll see a heck of a lot of the Eagles' new backup, but it would be nice to see him now in the offense. He's kind of had a rough start to training camp at this last week with a new center snapping him the ball. The Eagles had some issues with that early on in Josh Andrews. He's been able to perform better, and that in turn has allowed a lot of the skill position players around him to perform better. So we're going to see Marcus Mariota. I would keep an eye out on these running backs, some of the new guys, maybe getting a handoff here and there. I wouldn't think much more than that for DeAndre Swift or Rashad Penny. Probably should see a fair amount of Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott, and some of the other running backs down further on the depth chart. In terms of the receiver position, Olamide Zaccheaus acquired it in the offseason. He should play a little bit. It'd be nice to see how he fits in here in Philadelphia. And then if you want to check out one rookie at the skill position spot that I would pay attention to, it's Joseph Ngada, who the Eagles brought in as an undrafted rookie. And he's been doing some things here in camp, but let's see how he does when the pads are on and he's playing against another team. On the other side of the ball, that I think is where most of the attention will be directed, and specifically in the middle of that defensive line with Jalen Carter, the Eagles' top pick, and on the edge with Nolan Smith, the Eagles' second first-rounder from back in the spring. Those guys are going to get a lot of attention from fans and certainly from the Eagles coaches to see how they can contribute. I would also look at the linebacker position. Nakobe Dean, although he did return to practice on Thursday after an ankle injury, I'm not sure if he'll be up to speed or the Eagles will feel comfortable putting him out there. He's expected, obviously, to be the starter at Mike. But with the new linebackers they brought in, Miles Jack, Zach Cunningham, these are veterans. They have to get up to speed in the defense, but the Eagles don't really have a lot of numbers at that position. So I wouldn't be surprised to see those guys get some snaps there. In the secondary, I'm excited to see how Josh Jobe is gonna play. He right now looks to have solidified his role as the number 3 outside cornerback. And that's important because with Darius Slay and James Bradbury getting up there in age, and obviously injuries are always a part of the game. If they get hurt, one of those guys gets hurt, it's probably going to be Jobe to go in there. And he's actually done very well this camp, second-year cornerback out of Alabama. In the secondary, I'm also looking at the rookie Sidney Brown. He hasn't really done much in camp yet, but I think this may be an opportunity with the pads on for him to kind of show what he's capable and maybe make a push for one of those starting spots. It looks like Reed Blankenship has really kind of locked down one of the starting spots. Terrell Edmonds and Kevon Wallace seem to be, competing for that second spot, but there's 3 preseason games here to play. Sidney Brown should get a lot of opportunities, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how he does here in the preseason opener. Other than that, you're going to see a lot of guys on the bottom, near the bottom of the roster, trying to find some way to make this team. There's 90 guys right now on the roster, and there's only 53 spots. Certainly, there are some practice squad spots that they can fill when the season starts. But everyone's vying for one of those 53 spots, so it should be really interesting to see how this first preseason game plays out for the Eagles. Back to you guys at Gameday Central.
Thank you, Jeff McLean, for his thoughts on today's preseason opener against the Eagles and Ravens. Olivia, let's get yours. Give me a player to watch out for on offense. Who are you watching out as the offense takes the field with Brian Johnson, their new offensive coordinator?
Josh, I'm going to take some creative liberties here with your prompt. Instead of saying just one player, I'm going to throw a myriad of players at you. Whoever is lining up in the backfield, or I should say whoever is working in at running back in today's game, is who I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Right now, we don't really know who RB1 is. We've been given the unofficial depth chart here, and there are, 5 different running backs listed at running back number 1, which, again, I think we have to keep in mind that this is the media relations department that assembles these, but you're looking at some combination of Kenny Gainwell, Rashad Penny, Boston Scott, Trey Sermon, DeAndre Swift. Let's not forget about Kennedy Brooks vying for a spot on the initial 53-man roster. So keeping an eye on who is going to be getting the bulk of the touches, the team that they're working with in these training camp practices, and then who's working in on game days during the preseason is going to be a big thing that I'm keeping an eye on as we get closer and closer to finding out who makes the initial roster.
I'll add a quick thought there, Olivia. Who is taking that first snap out of the backfield week 1 at New England? I think it's got to be either Kenny Gainwell or DeAndre Swift, right?
I was going to say DeAndre Swift. Whether he's taking it out of the backfield or if he's lining up at the line of scrimmage, I think is going to be the big question too, because we know he can do that.
All right, Olivia is paying attention to all of the running backs here tonight. I'm going to piggyback on Jeff's answer with Joseph Ngata, a 6'2", 6'3" receiver out of Clemson. It just seems like almost like a basketball type player out there. He boxes out his defensive back really well. He uses his body so well. It seems like almost every practice he's made play. We'll see as the pads come on against another team if that momentum continues in Baltimore. So we're watching the receivers, we're watching the running backs. Olivia, give me one player on defense that you're going to be watching tonight.
I'm going to actually stick to one player this time. I won't break the rules. I'm really interested to see how Jalen Carter performs today, assuming that he is playing. I suppose we'll get some more information on that shortly. But yes, definitely going to have an eye on Carter as we go through preseason here. It seems like he's been a little bit on the quiet side. He's had some nice reps here and there in practice over this past week. But just seeing is he standing out in any particular way and affecting the pass rush and getting to the quarterback and clogging up the middle. Those types of big plays will be definitely taking a watchful eye on as we get underway here with preseason.
All right, Olivia goes with Jalen Carter, the team's top pick in this year's draft. I think I've got to go with the defensive backs, Olivia. I'm talking about the guys at the back of the depth chart. It just seems like there's been a lot of chatter about that seemingly fifth spot. If the Eagles obviously are going to keep James Bradbury, Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox. At this point, it seems like Josh Jobe is a lock to make the roster. He's continued to make some stellar pass breakups during practices. If the Eagles keep 5 or 6 defensive backs, I mean, that's a situation where they're going to have to say goodbye to a lot of talented guys. I mean, they brought in Greedy Williams in free agency. Zach McPherson is back here on his 3rd year. Keely Ringo, a rookie, again, out of Georgia that they really like. Even some undrafted guys like Eli Ricks, Mekhi Garner, all vying for either that 5th or 6th cornerback spots. They're going to definitely get an opportunity here to shine. Let's see where their stock goes tonight in the preseason opener. Olivia, I know it's just the preseason, but the Ravens, you got to point out, they are 23-0 dating back since 2016. I mean, that's just such an incredible feat. Kudos to Jim Harbaugh as he leads this team against the Ravens. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, he stated that he's not going to play. The Ravens will not play their starters. It's looking like Jalen Hurts is not going to play. Olivia, rather than give me a score, what is, as just as you cover this team tonight, what's really the biggest thing that you're looking out for?
I think it's just the operation running smoothly. It's preseason for everyone. There's another cliche that we like to throw around, even for us reporters, when we're, airing early on in the season, is that there's just going to be a lot of things to get used to for the coaching staff, for the players. Does everything run smoothly? Are there any really big explosive plays that the defense is giving up that can be cause for concern? And then the other way is the offense able to really inflict some damage on this Ravens defense. So, you certainly don't want to see anything big and glaring, but that's where this is the time. If you're going to make any mistakes, preseason is the place to do it. But let's see how smooth this operation goes tonight.
I'm sure Nick Sirianni is right there in line with you. He wants a smooth operation. Even at the practice, rather than having a coaching assistant operate the game clock. I mean, the Eagles hired a full referee. It's showing that, he wants the operation to run smoothly in the preseason. I think his exact quote was he wants week 1 running like it's week 10. When those games are very, very important. Even Howie Roseman getting into the heat of things at the practice the other day at Lincoln Financial Field. There was a situation where Sean Desai, there was a miscommunication, rather, with Sean Desai and the personnel. They were trying to get a sub in, and Howie Roseman kind of butted in and yelled towards Sean's direction. We'll see how smoothly things are running here on August 12th, the preseason opener, again, between the Philadelphia Eagles and Baltimore Ravens. Olivia, it is just about time to wrap up. I want to thank our audience for tuning in to Inquire Live at Gameday Central. Make sure you stick around at inquire.com/Eagles Game Day to follow along with us as we post our thoughts on the game and also have a conversation with you. A reminder, that's also where you can leave your comments and questions to be read in next week's show. Next Thursday, we will be back at Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field with the Eagles hosting the Cleveland Browns in week 2. For Olivia Reiner, I am Josh Tolentino. Thank you so much for tuning in to Game Day Central. Enjoy the game.